ask that we all please rise for the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Davidson?
Mr. Mikowski?
Here.
Ms. Rinaldi?
Here.
Ms. Wilk?
Here.
Mr. Lambert?
Here.
Ms. Crotty?
Here.
Mr. Vincenzi?
Here.
Ms. Rosa?
Here.
Mr. Gambardella?
Here.
Ms. Albino? And Mr. Tika.
Here.
Thank you. Board members should have received in their Friday packet the Board of Education regular meeting minutes from November 14th, 2016. Thank you, Mrs. Davidson, for preparing those for us. Does anybody have any questions or edits on those minutes? Okay, I'd ask for a motion.
Yes, Madam Chair, I move that the board approve of the minutes from November 14th, 2016 meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
And an abstention.
One abstention?
Two, sorry.
Two abstentions, Mrs. Wilk and Mrs. Rinaldi. So moved. Welcome, everybody. Happy to see you all here this evening, especially the students and their family members and friends. Tonight, we would like to recognize the Watertown Garden Club and the Swift Garden Club for having received the Luckner Youth Award from the Federated Garden Club of America. To be honest with you, I had to do some research on what exactly that meant and what kind of organization the umbrella organization of the Federated Gardens Club of Connecticut and of America really is. And what I found was that they really do an amazing amount of work across this country, across school districts, across cities and towns, beautifying the environment that they're in, which goes really hand in hand with what our students do at Swift. The Federated Garden Club of Connecticut awarded them for their outstanding efforts to beautify the Swift School. They received the Luckner Youth Award, which was established way back in 1993, and it includes a silver bowl that is awarded to a club for their outstanding work within a youth group in a school setting. In partnership with the Watertown Garden Club, students have been carefully caring and loving and putting all of their efforts into the Swift courtyards and gardens, maintaining the planters in front of the building, and recycling the water bottles to raise funds and support what they do. The Watertown Board of Education would like to congratulate all of the members of the Swift Garden Club and their advisors for their statewide recognition. And we'd like to thank you for working towards the betterment and beautification of not just the Swift community, but our entire town. You see, so many people go to the Swift School. We have sports clubs, government meetings, people in all around town and surrounding towns use that building, and when they walk in, they know that we care about the space that we're in, and we have great pride in the space that we're in, largely due to what the Garden Club does. And on behalf of myself and the board, we'd like to congratulate you on your honor. We'd like to recognize you individually, so please come forward when you hear your name being called. And once you've come up and received an award from us, we'd like you to stand to the side, because at the end of recognizing you and your advisors, we'd like to take a picture. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Cardamola.
Thank you. Good evening, and pardon my voice. Before we forget to tell you, parents, grandparents, and so on, the agendas that are over there for tonight's meeting have the students' names on them. So if you wanted to take those as another keepsake, stop on your way out and grab one. Okay, so we'll start with Jackson Almation. Sophia Dodona. Hi, Sophia.
Congratulations.
Isabella Dacchio. Victoria Dacchio. Avery Gelinas. Emily Kiernan. Congratulations, Emily.
Congratulations, thank you.
Erin Pizenkowski. Since Megan was here. Melanie Martinelli. Congratulations, Melanie. Good to see you. Lance Regan. Congratulations, Lance. Alyssa Ruskowski. Hi, Alyssa.
Congratulations, good job.
Sophia Samoas. Jessica Stango. Jess. And Sophia Gugliotti. I don't think she's here, yeah. Okay. Yeah, just want to also recognize our two advisors who put an awful lot of themselves and their own time into this club. Ms. Diane Galzetti. Diane is a technology teacher at Swift.
Thank you so much. Congratulations.
And also Pam Genucitis. Hi, Pam. And Pam is a reading specialist at Swift.
So we're going to pause for a moment and take a moment to enjoy looking at the work that you brought with you this evening and your award, and take some photographs. Dr. Karamola, did you have something to add?
Yes, I see, even without my glasses, I saw you earlier when I had them on. I think we have Sally Cushless and Barbara McCleary also here from the Garden Club, right? And again, thank you very much, because without the Watertown Garden Club, this Garden Club wouldn't be what it is either. And these and many other ladies who come from the Watertown Garden Club to Swift do an awful lot of work with our students, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm coming. Where is Ms. Liz?
So if the students wouldn't mind coming to the center? Students and advisors and people from the Watertown Garden Club as well?
All right, so let's look to the left. That's right. All right, the middle. And the right. Okay, everybody all set? Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, everyone.
Let's rock. That's it.
We really do have an exciting meeting that continues, but I won't blame you if the kids don't stay. Moving on, item F in our agenda, report from Student Council representative.
Thank you. Polk's November town meeting took place on Friday, November 18th, with several students being recognized for respect, responsibility, and safety. Polk and Judson held their combined roller skating event on November 19th with high attendance and a lot of fun. At Judson Elementary School, Mrs. DiBiase was recognized as Judson's school's Turkey of the Year, with students in her class purchasing the most feathers to decorate her turkey. In total, $850 was raised for the Watertown Food Bank. At a recent PTO meeting, the membership agreed to purchase 24 additional Chromebooks for the school. At Swift Middle School, members of the Student Council held a drive to support community needs by raising funds for the Watertown Food Bank, with not only a monetary donation being donated, but also hundreds of non-perishables. Grade A students went on a field trip to the CT Science Museum, and they participated in hands-on experiments as well as going on a tour of the exhibits. And at Watertown High School, about 40% of seniors have handed in or sent in their college applications, and counselors are finishing up senior meetings with junior meetings beginning in January. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Cardamola, superintendent's recommendations and report.
You see on the agenda, there are a number of appointments that are just fulfilling the remaining advisor positions for sports in our clubs and so on. I'd like to just point out a couple of things. One, I sent out what I've stopped calling the snow letter because I'd rather not think of it in that way. But as you know, we did already one day have to call a delay this year. So just so the board is aware, and I sent a copy home to you. It went out via email to all people in the district. It is on the website. And for the younger students, it went home. Copies also, Mrs. Mecca sent home a letter from John Trumbull as well. And I specifically bring up John Trumbull because, as you know, with not kindergarten anymore, thankfully, but with pre-kindergarten, we still have AM and PM. And so, Mrs. Mecca, again, thank you to you, who happens to be here tonight, was able to work out the schedule so that students don't necessarily miss a whole day when we have a delay. And you know, in the past, if we were delayed in the morning, that usually meant no AM pre-K. But Mrs. Mecca looked carefully at the schedule, and now they are just delayed like everyone else. So we had a lot of questions about that. during this last delay, but a letter was sent home that is on the website, and if I have to make another call, and for example, hopefully that's not tomorrow, because as I understand it, that's at least a little bit of a possibility for some ice overnight, but I will say it the next couple of times, just so those pre-K parents hear it again. Also, a notification for all that there will be a December 7th ceremony at the Oakville Green to remember 75 years since the bombing of Pearl Harbor, and that is sponsored by our local Watertown Oakville Veterans Council. There will also be an open house at all posts in Oakville and Watertown, which is the Oakville VFW Post 7330 on Davis Street, the VFW Post on Thomaston Road in Watertown, and also the Oakville American Legion on Bunker Hill in Watertown. So they invite us every year. Obviously, this is a big year, as it's the 75th anniversary, so if anyone is able to attend, we will be present there. I'm trying to save my voice for what might be very important for you to know besides that tonight. I think that other than to point out the, again, I know you mentioned this, Ally, but the Leo Club induction at Swift last week went very well. We have new advisors there, and I'm thankful that we were able to continue that club. That's a great partnership with the Lions Club. I think we now have the largest Leo Club in the state, if I understand correctly. So we're proud of that. I also had office hours at the Watertown Library last Thursday afternoon. Obviously, I'll be continuing that. I saw a couple of people at those office hours. And we had our professional development day since the last board meeting also. And that was on November 8th. We have done additional work with our learning targets for part of the day, and then part of the day we broke into individual school-based training. And for example, at John Trumbull, we continue training with the Columbia Teachers College, which has been great work being done for grades K to 2 down at John Trumbull. At Polk and at Judson, we continue to work on teachers' understanding of priority standards, because as you know, we're shifting to a standards-based report card in grades 3 to 5. We've already done that at John Trumbull, and now that work is going very well at Judson and Polk. Thank you to Ms. Feckety, Ms. Scully, and Dr. Parlato, and also Mr. Turner, who has had a lot of work to do with that from the technology angle. At Swift and at Watertown High, likewise, we continue to work on priority standards, and that is so that we continue the work on, as you'll see when Dr. Parlato speaks tonight to the testing report, so that we continue working on ensuring that students know the priority standards. What are the standards that are the priority for all students to know, to understand, and to be able to do? And that is a large focus of our work this year, and it's a piece of the learning target continuum too. I know we've talked quite a bit about learning targets, so I won't belabor that point tonight, but it's a piece that is catapulting us forward with training for teachers and with revisions of curriculum and putting assessments, especially common assessments, into place across the grade levels. And the rest, we'll talk about the app.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Cardamone? Okay, all set.
Thank you.
Moving on to the agenda, H, presentation of the 2016 test scores. Dr. Parlato, our Director of Curriculum Assessment and Professional Development, will present a report on the 2016 test results. Welcome, Dr. Parlato.
Thank you very much. We'll begin this evening with an overview of all the tests that we take in our district that are standardized. So we begin with Smarter Balanced, and you can see that in 2015 it was given in grades 3 through 8 and 11, and in 2016 it was given in grades 3 through 8, and grade 11 had a different test. Smarter Balance is a national assessment, and so it's given in 18 different states, and the tested subjects are literacy, language arts, and mathematics. The big difference with Smarter Balanced is that it's a computer administered test. Students do not take it as paper and pencil. Other forms of standardized testing in our district, we have the Connecticut Mastery Test Science in grades 5 and 8. And then we have Connecticut Academic Performance Test Science in grade 10. And both of those are paper and pencil administration. So those have yet to move to computer administration. At the high school level, other tests that we have are the SAT, which you know as a widely used college admission test. And we also have the advanced placement exams, AP tests. And these provide students opportunities to experience college level content while they're still in high school. And then to take an AP test, depending on their score, will grant them some college credit if they earn a certain score on those tests. I know I say this every year, but it bears repeating just so that we have a frame of reference for where some of our scores fall. So a district reference group is a state Department of Education categorizing system for all the school districts in the state. And so the DIRGs, as they're known, go from A through I, and Watertown is in district reference group D. And so the way that the state figures that out is they look at your median family income, your poverty level, the percentage of single-parent families, non-English speaking homes, percentage of families with a bachelor's degree, and percentage of parents in white-collar or managerial occupations. They have a statistical formula that they use, putting that together, and then they decide which towns go into which category, and Watertown is in district reference group D. The most affluent towns in our state, just so you know, are in district reference group A. Next, we have some overall headlines about our testing. If we look across our standardized testing from grades 3 through 8, as well as 10 and 11, these are some summary statements about that. So the good news is that we saw growth in grades 3 through 8. If we look across all 1,300 students who are in grades 3 through 8, we have growth in both literacy and mathematics in the Smarter Balanced testing. So that's certainly a positive statement for us to make, with the caveat, of course, that we always have room to grow. So as we look at the scores, you'll see what I mean by that. You will see that we have continued solid performance in language arts literacy across all grade levels in Smarter Balanced. The third bullet, of course, is that mathematics, as you'll see when we look at the scores, remains an area of concern, and it sure has been over the past 9 years. But we have a specific plan that is in place and that we've been implementing consistently across grade levels, not only 3 through 8 and 9 through 12, but K-12. So we have a K-12 math plan that we've been following very specifically for the past 2 years. Some other headlines, we had some remarkable growth in grade 5 science on the Connecticut Mastery Test. And that bears noting that we grew 23 points from one year to the next in grade 5 science, which is really probably the greatest jump we've ever made. If I look back at all the testing reports that we have, we grew 23 points in science in grade 5 because we changed the way that we teach the sequence of science in grade 5. And so we took a risk with teaching the sequence in a certain way, and it paid off with those grade 5 students. A change this year for the SAT was that all grade 11 students had to take the SAT. And that was the first time that happened. That was a mandate from the State Department of Education. So rather than grade 11 students taking Smarter Balance, they took the SAT during the school day on a given day that was prescribed by the State Department of Education. So all grade 11 students in the state took the SAT on that day. And importantly, it was a new version of the SAT. It wasn't the SAT that had been given for the past 25 years. They rewrote the questions so that they're more aligned with the Common Core state standards. So it's impossible for us to compare our SAT scores at this time because it was a brand new test. You will see that across our advanced placement test scores, out of 13 tested areas, our scores rose in 12 of them. So that's a notable feat for our district. One thing you will hear me say over time is that although our progress might seem slow and steady, it's incremental, which means we know that change lasts when we take our time. So we won't see giant leaps of score growth across any of the subject areas, because we know that if we're careful and we build the foundations the right way, we will continue to have a positive trend rather than a spike and then a fall. So that's kind of our stake in the ground in terms of the way that we view progress and growth in our district. So the first slide, although it's a little bit hard to see, let me tell you what it is. If you look at all 1,300 students in our district who took Smarter Balanced in grades 3 through 8, and you compare their scores in 14-15 compared to 15-16, we grew 4.1%. And if you look at our whole entire Durg D, that placed us 9th. So we had the 9th most growth in Durg D in language arts for our 1,300 students in grades 3 through 8. That's a nice place to be in terms of the growth that we made in language arts. It's a nice high placement in our Durg in terms of the growth and overall. So as you can see, that says that 61.1% of our students met standard. You're going to hear me say that phrase over and over again. The way that the state and the testing has you report on your students is to say that they met the standard or they met the passing standard. So because 61.1% of our students met the passing standard, which was a growth from 57%, we placed 9th in the Durg. What that demonstrates, of course, is that we're making progress across the grade levels. So it's not just progress that is confined to one grade level or to one school. It shows that if you look across our schools, we have a nice rate of progress. This is a new bit of information that we're able to report this year. We haven't been able to report it before because we haven't had Smarter Balanced data 2 years in a row that we could use to compare. This is called Cohort Information. Why it is very helpful is that it allows you to look at the same group of students across 2 years. So for example, in the first row where you see it says grade 3 students in 2015, 67.5% of those students met the passing standard. Those same students, when they took language arts in grade 4, so a year later, the same group of kids, 69.3% of students met the passing standard. So that group of students grew 1.8% over the course of a year. Now, I did a little research over the last few days just because I was curious, and I wanted to make sure that we had the most accurate information. So just so you know, from grades 3 to grade 4, when you go up 1.8%, mathematically it makes sense, 4 more students grew to the passing standard. That's what a 1.8% jump means. Similarly, if you look at grade 4 to grade 5, so you see that our students, that same group of students who took it in grade 4, the same kids who took it in grade 5, they went down 2.1%. So that was, just so you know, that's 5 students who met the passing standard in grade 4, but when they took it in grade 5, 5 fewer students met the passing standard. A little later on, we'll talk about why that may have happened. So what are some of the hypotheses that we have about, well, how come all the students didn't advance? And how come 5 students who previously had met the passing standard didn't meet it this time? You can see the students who were in grade 5, same students who took the test in grade 6, they grew 4.8% in language arts. Grade 6 to grade 7, same group of students, grew 0.5%. In grade 7 to grade 8 students, down 4.2%, which is 9 students. 9 students met the standard in grade 7, did not meet 9 fewer students did not meet it in grade 8. The point of that slide is to show that if I show you grade 3 from 2015 and I show you grade 3 from 2016, those are 2 different groups of kids. It's hard to compare them because there's so many different factors in any given class or grade of kids. The cohort information shows you what happens when the same exact group of kids takes the test the next year. So it compares apples to apples in a more careful way than the other way does. For mathematics, like language arts, this is all 1,300 of our students who took math, Smarter Balanced in grades 3 through 8. And you can see that we made 1.9% growth from one year to the next. That placed us 18th in our Durg D. So although we say that we know that math is an area of concern and challenge for us, And as we go on, you'll see what I mean by that. We're still demonstrating growth, even though it's small. So that shows that our initiatives and some of our work and some of the things that we're considering and addressing are actually working, because we're still making progress, even if it's a small step. This is the cohort information for math. So again, the same groups of students who took the test, you read it across. In grade 3, 63.8% of students met the passing standard. Those same kids in grade 4, 52.8%. So they went down 11%, which I figured out is 24 fewer students. I'm going to address that once I go through the rest of the slide. You can see grade 4 to grade 5 went down 2.8. Grade 5 to grade 6 down 0.8, which is really 2 students, just so you know, 0.8%. Grade 6 to grade 7, same group of kids, went up 12.3%. And grade 7 to grade 8, down 2.1%. So if you look at overall, why does a group of students go up or go down? There are a number of ways to look at it. So one thing you have to keep in mind is, though, even though it's the same group of kids, the test becomes more challenging. So when they take Smarter Balanced Math in grade 3, it's a certain set of standards that they've been taught and that they're tested on. When they take Smarter Balanced in grade 4, it's not the same test they took in grade 3. It's a test that addresses the grade 4 standards, which are more complex and more challenging. So that's one explanation for why sometimes 5 kids who met the passing standard in one year don't necessarily meet that passing standard the next year. Also, in math particularly, we changed our math series. So actually, we didn't have, in grades 3, 4, and 5, we didn't have a math series. We had our homegrown curriculum. Moving to a new textbook often causes a little bit of dip in scores because we're learning how to implement all of those new materials. So particularly with the series that we picked, it's filled with manipulatives, items that teachers have to use, objects that students have to manipulate in their understanding of mathematics. Everyone had to learn how to do that, the students and the teachers combined, how to implement that new series. Sometimes you see a dip in scores when you have a new series, and that's another potential explanation for why, particularly in that grade 3 to grade 4, why they went down 11.0%. We have some next steps for Smarter Balanced. So as I said, we have a math strategy and a plan that we're using grades K through 12. First and foremost, it's making sure that we have resources. So as I said, in grades 3, 4, and 5, we just got the textbooks and all the materials that go with it. Now we're backing that into grade 2, and next year we'll back it into grade 1, so eventually we'll have the same math series, K through 5. What's important about that is that the current K1 and 2 math series isn't as Common Core aligned as the grades 3, 4, and 5 math series is. So that math series in K1 and 2 was purchased before I arrived, and so that's a resource that we have to revise, and that we know that. We've also spent significant money on some online resources. So we have a fluency program that students are able to use. We know that if they don't know their math facts, their addition, their subtraction, multiplication, division, if they don't know those quickly and cold, then they're going to struggle with the rest of the problem solving. So we've invested some money in an online program that students are able to use. They really enjoy it because it's built on a game platform, and so they have to solve certain games in order to progress in their fact fluency. So that's a positive thing. We also purchased a problem-solving program so that students are able to practice their problem solving in the units of mathematics. So it's not just the textbook that we have and all the materials that go with it. It's also additional problem-solving examples for them to use. We provided professional learning for teachers. So several weeks ago, we had someone come for our teachers alone to go over how do you teach problem solving, how do you teach students to analyze their own work, how do teachers analyze students' work and figure out the next day's lesson based upon the work that students turn in. We have our K-6 mathematics instructional specialist, and what she does a lot of things, but primarily she models lessons for teachers. She creates resources for them. She shows them. We wouldn't have been able to implement all these textbooks from grade 2 through 5 if we didn't have her helping us figure out how to do that. Because expecting a teacher just to open a box and figure out the jumble of materials that's in there is certainly a challenge. So we utilize Miss Archibald in making sure that teachers know how to use the materials, and then she shows them how to do it, and then they have to practice it. So that's tremendously helpful. Additionally, Miss Archibald develops a variety of assessments that teachers can use to figure out what they know, what students can do, and what we have to teach the next day to make sure they understand the concepts. Also for Smarter Balance, we're revising our language arts curriculum as we go along. So it's a pretty solid document, but with any curriculum, you have to revise over time. So we're always carefully checking that to make sure that it is as up to date as it can be. And one more thing, students, one surprise with Smarter Balance for a lot of students is how to manipulate the computer. So they're very used to swiping on a phone and taking pictures or making the screen get bigger. But in terms of manipulating the mouse for a testing situation is a new experience for a lot of students. One thing that we're doing last year and this year is making sure that they have practice with those test items and how to use the mouse and how to use the calculator the right way before the test happens so that it's not a surprise to them on the day of the test. Well, it did work before. There it goes. For CMT and CAP Science, we're going to continue to use the, in grade 5, that sequence change that we tried last year and we saw great results with. The problem with science is that the state has adopted the next generation science standards, which are really the gold standard in how to teach science. However, CMT and CAP Science are testing students on the old Connecticut science frameworks. So that's a little bit contradictory because while the new standards exist, students are being tested on the 12-year-old framework. So one of the struggles that we have with science is how do we make sure that we're teaching the Connecticut science frameworks upon which students will be tested, but also making sure that they're getting the content of the next generation science standards. So that's the sort of the push and pull with CMT and CAP Science. We're making sure, though, that the learning targets that students have at each level are not duplicated. And so looking at the next generation science standards, looking at the content that we teach, and making sure there's not duplication from grade 2 to grade 5 or grade 3 to grade 7 to make sure that the content is new so that students aren't learning the same thing over and over again. And of course, we're still waiting for guidance from the state about what do we do about the new science assessments. So they tell us in 2018, we'll have a new science test. It'll be aligned to the next generation science standards and it'll be on the computer. It won't be paper and pencil anymore. So we'll see, that's, stay tuned for that. At the high school level, we'll talk about some of their exams now. The SAT has 2 tested areas, English language arts and mathematics. Traditionally and currently, the high score in both tests is 800. So you can see, we can't compare SAT data, as I said, because it's a brand new test. So we have to look at how we did in 2016. So in English language arts, in DIRG D, this is the percentage of students meeting or exceeding standard. That's the language the state would like you to use. So you can see that 68.8% of our students met or exceeded the standard. Now it's interesting, the scale in language arts, take a look at East Lyme, which is the first school. They have 85.9% of students meeting standard, and we have 68.8. And the reason I draw your attention to that is you'll see how math is very, very different. So you won't see such a high score in the #1 position in math. So historically across the state, students struggle with the math. Fewer students meet or exceed standard in math when they take the SAT. So as you can see, there's East Lyme again. They're in the #1 position, but instead of 85, they're at 59% of students meeting the standard. So it shows you the scale is much, much different in terms of how students succeed in math in our state. And you can see for us that 28.1% of students met or exceeded the standard with no score reported by Clinton and East Granby. So the way that it stands is it puts us last in the DIRG at 28.1% of students meeting the standard. We have some next steps for the SAT. As I said, it's the required grade 11 standardized test. We are ensuring that both students and teachers understand the content of the test and the way that the questions are asked, which is a little different than they had been in the past. So there's a little bit of an increase in multiple choice. on the new SAT. And so we have to make sure that the assessments we give in our schools mirror that a little bit better so that students understand how to take a complicated multiple choice test, not a simple one. We're analyzing our tasks K-12 for the level of challenge to make sure that our assignments and our tasks are rigorous enough to build the foundation for students to get to the SAT in grade 12. So ensuring that a task in grade 2 or in grade 6 is challenging enough helps students learn more and stretches them so that when they get to the SAT, either in math or in literacy, they're more prepared. We have an SAT prep course in language arts and in math. That is an elective offering at Watertown High School that students can choose to take. And we did invest some resources in that course this year so they have the highest quality preparation book that's on the market. So we made sure that if we're going to offer the course, we're going to make sure that the resources that we have are very high quality, and so the preparation book that they have for that fits that bill. One other thing that's not listed on the slide, we're offering math tutoring after school, 2 days a week, and we're able to use some of our grant funding, our state and federal grant funding to fund that, and so that's just another way that we try to use our resources wisely. For advanced placement testing, as I said, it provides students with college-level content while they're still in high school. Of course, it's a nationally recognized program found in most high schools in the country. The scale of an AP exam is a 1 through a 5, and the 5 is the highest. Depending on the college the student attends, they will get course credit depending on their AP score. So for less competitive colleges, if a student earns a 3 or higher, they will get the course credit in whatever AP exam that was. For more competitive colleges, it's a 4 or higher if they earn that on the test. So on the next slide, you can see how most of the numbers are in blue. Those are all the areas where we gained and increased our score. So you can see in 12 out of 13 areas, the advanced placement score from 2015 to 2016 has increased. And the only one that did not increase is music theory. I can explain that by saying that music theory has very few students who take the AP exam. And so some years you might have 5 students take the exam and 4 of them may get a high score. And so it skews the average when you have a small class like that. At any rate, though, it demonstrates that out of our 13 tested areas, it shows our growth across 12 of them. For this slide, if you look all the way to the left, what you really want to look at is all the way to the left the 2016 box and the 2015 box. What those 2 boxes show you are how all of our students are advancing. So if you look at 2016, 10% of all of our students who took an AP exam scored a 5, the highest score. In 2015, it was only 4% of students who achieved a 5. If you look at the 4, 18% of students in 2016 achieved a 4, as opposed to 13% in 2015. 31% of students scored a 3 in 2016, as opposed to 26% in 2015. So you can see it's almost as if all of our students who are taking AP exams are pushing upward towards the higher score bands of that test. So I figured it out, and I'm on the wrong page. While we're still working at this, and this is important to note, I will acknowledge that, am I thrilled that 41% of students scored a 2 or a 1 in 2016? Of course not. But that's much better than 2015, where 57% of students scored a 2 or 1. So again, it shows our progress over time, and it shows how all students are advancing in a way across the score bands in advanced placement testing. So just like our other areas, we have some next steps for advanced placement testing. So teachers who teach advanced placement took a very careful look at the way the test was structured, and they made sure that the assessments that they gave students mirrored those AP tests more closely. So again, when students took the actual AP test, there was less of a surprise that whatever they took in their course was very clearly aligned with what the actual AP test looked at. Making sure that the teachers of AP work together as a group, which they might not have had more time to do before. So now we're making sure that if you teach AP Calculus and you teach AP Literature, there's more of an opportunity for you to talk about, well, how are you teaching this? What are the struggles you're having? How are you getting through the curriculum? The AP curriculum is very, very prescribed. So you start on the first day of school, and they expect you to get to point X by June or by May when the exam is. And it's kind of like being on a hamster wheel when you teach AP, because you have to get through that curriculum. So teachers are figuring out, how do we pace this so that we can actually get through, but the students are actually learning at the same time. So it's not as if they're just covering it to cover it. We wanted to talk a little bit tonight about the resources that we've been fortunate to get over the course of all the budgetary processes over the last 3 or 4 years, and how we use them to increase our score. So as I mentioned before, the math textbook series is something that we use a lot, and we use at great length in grades 2 through 5 to make sure that we have a common resource. As I said, we have Miss Archibald, our instructional specialist, who's doing, she's moving mountains across 7 grade levels, because there's a lot of work to do. And so she knows she has to do it, and we're using her to make sure that the teaching is as effective as it can be. Very importantly, now we have certified computer teachers grades K through 5, which didn't exist before. And so finally, students have guaranteed computer instruction from grades K through 8. Because standardized testing is computer-based, they must have that foundation of computers starting in kindergarten. So I walked into a class a few weeks ago, and they were doing mouse practice in kindergarten so that they are able to use their fine motor skills to learn how to use that mouse, so that later on, believe it or not, when they take Smarter Balance in grade 3 or 4, and they have to figure out how to use this calculator that's on the side of the screen, that foundation is being laid in kindergarten, now that we have certified computer teachers K-5. Another important aspect, if it would turn, well, I'll tell you anyway. We have certified library media specialist K-5, which we didn't have before. And there you go. What that does is it really reinforces students' literacy skills. So it's not only them reading a book that they might pick, it's them doing research even in first grade and kindergarten. It's them learning how to find sources and figure out which sources are valid and helpful. It helps them write, and it helps them problem solve, because they have to figure out which sources they need to either solve their problem or write their paper or do their report. Having those certified teachers in the library media centers will only reinforce our efforts and will only make students better at all kinds of learning, not just testing. And then, of course, we have full-day kindergarten now, and that is the absolutely necessary foundation that students need as they carry forward in their K-12 career. Now it's working, it looks like. A few things to consider for future needs. So what we definitely need is continued professional development in a variety of assessments. So not just assessments that are aligned to Smarter Balanced or the SAT or whatever the next generation science exam will look like. But how do we make sure that our students are able to do performance tasks? So not only answer multiple choice questions that might be complex, but how do they demonstrate their learning through a performance? Future needs as well. We have an increasing population of English language learners in our district, and so we need support in assisting them get better at their English, which will help them in all of their studies and all of their academics. And another need to consider is mathematics instructional support grades 7 through 12. So we have Miss Archibald K-6, and having another person work at that same position at the secondary level will certainly increase and accelerate our progress in secondary mathematics. I end with one final slide, which is, why does this matter? Why does all this information matter, all these numbers and all these charts and graphs? So standardized assessments are one measure of the progress of our district. There's no question about that. Are there other measures of our district's progress? Of course. Standardized assessments tend to be the most public, and they tend to be the most publicized as well. That doesn't mean they're not important, but they're one measure of how we're doing. At the same time, we have to consider the fact that maximizing students' academic achievement, not just their test performance, not just making sure we go up 4.1% next year and 5% the year after, which is nice and of course what we'd love to see. But what that really represents or demonstrates is that our students are better learners. They're more prepared to go out in the world, whether it's the workforce or the military or college. So in increasing our test scores, we're increasing the life chances and the options for the students in this district. And so if there's one thing to leave you with, it's just that. It's not just the numbers that are in front of us, it's really how are we making sure that our students are most ready and most prepared when they graduate from our high school. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Parlato. Do board members have any questions for Dr. Parlato? Mr. Lambert first?
Dr. Parlato, someone that's been on this board for a few years, like myself, we see these test scores have been down, especially in mathematics, for quite a while. And, you know, we try to get economic development in this area, especially with people trying to get their families settled in a community. You know, one of the first things they look at are test scores, unfortunately. You know, that doesn't sometimes rate high on everybody's list, but on a lot of professionals that move in here, it does. And it's kind of a concern with me as a board member, especially in the mathematics end, because I have children and went through this system back a ways, 20 years, 15 years ago, maybe 25. Watertown was pretty much on the top of the scale everywhere. It's kind of disheartening for a board member like me to see where we were and where we are now. Of course, you know, there's a lot of issues with Common Core that the teachers aren't teaching the way they used to teach, and they have to change, and they have to look at a different way of teaching. And if they're old school teachers and they're young school teachers, it is a big difference. It is a big challenge, I would assume. So I've always wondered if we ever went to districts in our DIRD that have scored up at the top and find out how do they constantly do this. They're pretty much up there, especially in mathematics. Pretty much 4 or 5 schools are up there towards the top in fact, my grandchildren go to the Bethel system in Bethel, Connecticut. And they're always pretty much up at the top, especially in mathematics. Do we ever consider professional developing ourselves to their standards, or trying to find out what they do and what we're not doing?
So I share your concern, so I'll begin by saying that.
Yeah.
I would say that I would also agree with your point, first of all, that in the last 5 years, teaching has changed. And so someone who has re-entered the profession after 5 or 6 years has found a completely different field, not only in what is taught, but how you teach it. So our responsibility as a district is to make sure we provide, as you've mentioned, appropriate professional development for those people. So have we visited other districts? Yes. Particularly with our new math series in grades 2 through 5. Other districts have adopted it before we did. And so we have gone with Ms. Archibald leading the way on that, going to look at how they implement that math series in their schools so that our teachers can see different ways to use it. That is beyond them just having to dream it up by themselves. I would say that certainly you know the history better than I do, mentioning 15 or 20 years ago. A lot of it may well be about resources. I'm not going to say may well be, I know it is. So I worked at the number 7 school in math for 20 years, and I can tell you that there's a resource difference, even though we're both Dirt D, in terms of the personnel that are found in the district, the number of teachers, the class size, the infrastructure in terms of instructional support that's available. So that's part of the answer as well, in terms of the number of people that you need to assist in this radical shift in the way that we teach, especially in the last 6 years.
I know, excuse me, just
Please.
one more. I know Bethel, because my grandchildren go there, I know the dollars per student are much higher over there than we spend in Watertown. Fortunately for them, I guess that's part of the success story over there, I think. But, you know.
Is it the whole answer? It's certainly not the whole answer, but it's a big piece of the
Yeah,
answer.
it's some of the answer.
Personnel is very, very important to making sure everyone understands what is going on and what the expectations are and the most effective ways to practice.
I know our expectation, my expectation as part of the board is, I expect our math to go up.
So do I.
And, you know, as chairman of the Budget and Finance Committee, you know, we would like to hear of strategies, even if it costs more money, we'd like to at least know what we're faced with in order to win this battle. Because obviously this battle is very important to a lot of us, so.
I appreciate that. We'll certainly provide you with plenty of suggestions over the next few months.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert. I saw Jim had a question on this side.
Yeah, I just had, okay. I just had a comment. You know, from being a teacher and being actually a geography teacher, I deal with a lot of data, so I'm kind of
Sure.
used to seeing these sorts of things. But I just wanted to compliment you on the report. It was extremely clear and very informative too, as usual.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I noticed that you had a few strategies, and I'm sure things have been implemented in the past, and these things are all painstaking types of strategies that take a while to, I think, implement, like dealing with textbooks and professional learning development, and lesson modeling, and changing assessments, and revising curriculum. And these things aren't going to produce results overnight, correct? You know, it takes a while to really see the fruits of your labor, I assume. And you're looking at a jump here of 4.1% in language arts, and I think that's pretty good. You know, if you're working really hard and you're trying to get, you know, use a variety of strategies to try to make progress, I think that's commendable. What I don't get, and I don't expect an explanation because I just don't think there is one, is how, if it looks to me as though the average growth in the towns in the Durg is about 3-4%. How does a town like North Haven? Thank you. Okay, so how do they get 4 times how do they improve 4 times what the other towns? How do you get to 21% in language arts and mimic the same growth in math? To me, that's statistically, I can't say it, impossible. I've never seen anything like that from all the data I've reviewed throughout my teaching career. I just don't get it. And I don't expect you to explain it.
Believe it or not, I have part of an answer, Mr. Gambardella. Because we were shocked when we saw North Haven's improvement. So
Yeah.
part of the answer to that was that they added some instructional coaches, particularly grades 5 through 8. And that really assisted the teachers with implementing lessons that were not only aligned to the Common Core, but were engaging to students. So, you know, to Mr. Lambert's point, it's definitely a resource issue. It was they put some money towards personnel in their schools.
Was it that dramatic, though? I mean, we're still dealing with the same students, you know?
I think
the same
that
students-
another part of the answer is they also implemented very specific interventions for students who, let's say that you have a 4-point scale and 4 is exceeding and 3 is meeting. If you have kids who are at top 2, they're almost meeting, they implemented some intervention strategies that push those top 2 band kids into band 3. So they used an intervention strategy to push kids who were almost meeting standard into meeting standard.
Okay, was there an increase in spending over the year? Would you know?
The increase in spending was in their personnel.
Anybody, was it market or?
I don't know
You
the
don't
answer
know.
to
I
that
mean, it
yet.
was
I just know
I
that
don't
they
expect you
added,
to have that
I know they
information.
added resources and personnel to their, particularly to their upper elementary, middle school.
I mean, the budget didn't go up 21%, I'm sure.
I doubt that, but, you know, we could find that out.
Thank you, Jim. Any further questions? Okay, thank you. On this side, Mr. Mikowski, and then we'll move forward.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Parlato. So you mentioned personnel. Are our personnel any different compared to other districts, like the type of personnel that we're hiring or have in our district? And then to kind of follow that up, has anybody give any feedback, recommendations, requests, ideas after these statistics come out on, you know, what we can do as a district to change things like that?
So we employ certified teachers here, as they do in all other districts. When I'm talking about a different kind of employee or a different kind of personnel, that's a certified teacher who plays a different role. So in every building in North Haven, for example, they may have something called an instructional coach, as we have Miss Archibald. Miss Archibald covers 7 grades for us. In a place like North Haven or Bethel, they may have an instructional coach or 2 instructional coaches per building. That's the kind of personnel I mean. It doesn't mean that, when I say different personnel, it's a different category or role of the personnel.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that the personnel, the quality of the personnel is different.
I was just looking for that feedback, yeah.
Right. And what was your second question? I'm sorry.
Have you gotten any type of feedback or requests within the district on, ideas on what else we can potentially do to help move the needle on these?
So teachers, particularly teachers who are teaching the new math series, have sought out not only the support of Miss Archibald, but that's why we brought in the problem-solving person who is the expert in that program, because they were seeking new ways to use those problem-solving materials with their students. So are they asking for professional learning? Absolutely. Do we have resources for that professional learning? Certainly, to a certain extent, we do. And, teachers are certainly aware of the data. They know, and they ask appropriately for what they need.
Thank you, Mr. McCuskey.
Thank you.
Mrs. Rinaldi?
Hi. So I have a quick kind of comment too. Elementary school, math has changed a lot. And I know from speaking with parents and stuff too, a lot of frustration is when the kids come home to do their homework, the parents have no idea how to help them
Sure.
with that. So, and I know that there's websites that you can go on and you could, do we send those, are the parents aware of that? Because I could just imagine, like if the child is going home and they don't know, they can't figure out their homework, their parents can't help them, so then now they're going to school the next day and it's not complete, and that kind of backs everything up for the teacher too. So are we helping the parents in any way too? Are we, I know in the past we've done like math nights, and I know you can't teach the parents math, but I mean, I know that that's a concern, a frustration for the parents too, because they can't help their kids at home.
Yeah, I live that as well.
Yeah.
So I know that when 6th and 3rd grade comes home, it's the same struggle. So we have inconsistent practice. I'll be honest with you. Some teachers are very clear about the steps that are needed to follow, and they send that home. Is that a practice that we can make more consistent? Absolutely. So yes, it does happen in some classes. It doesn't happen in all classes, but that kind of parent support is indeed crucial to making sure that both the parents and the students understand the concept, but it's also the way of solving the problem. So the way that I do long division isn't necessarily the first way that my daughter learned, so my hands are a little bit tied in that way.
Right.
And sometimes the explanation sheet doesn't always fit the bill because it's conceptual mathematics. A sheet can't necessarily explain the
Right.
concept fully to you.
And I know sometimes when the student goes home, they don't remember exactly what the teacher said, and then they can't explain it either. So it's different, and math it's hard. It's very hard now. They don't just do a math problem. They have to explain it, and I don't think the parents are aware of that now. It's
Right.
much harder, so.
Right, I agree with you. I would say, though, that one consistent practice that we do have is that if a student runs into extreme trouble with a problem, or they're very, very stuck and there's conflict in the home over, I can't get number 7 or number 9 right, then a consistent practice across our schools is that, the student will bring it back in, either with a note from the parent or not, and explain that they had trouble with that, and then, there's not a penalty for a student on that,
Right, I didn't-
particularly in the elementary grades.
And I'm sorry, I just don't remember if you said, are there math tutors in in middle school? Do we have math? We don't have any
We don't have
tutors.
math, we have a hard time getting people to apply for the positions, interestingly enough. They're just,
'Cause they don't
people,
understand the math.
people teaching math it's hard to find them. Certified teachers and tutors, both. Are they in the budget? Yes. Did we have people who applied? No.
Thank you,
Thank
Mrs.
you.
Rinaldi. Mrs. Wolf?
Yes, I'm going back to like page 11. You had said that there was a reason why we had a decrease. And you had said just because we had changed to a new series. So the kids had to learn, the teachers had to learn, and that was one reason why there was a decrease in that year?
So you're slide 11, cohort information, right?
Yes, and you had said, the reason why there was a decrease in some of it was because we had changed over to a new series. And while the kids had to learn and the teachers had to learn?
Yes.
How long do those teachers have to actually learn that new series before they teach our children? I understand it's a very difficult thing to have to accomplish when you're going to a new series, but how long do they get prepped to be able to know it and to teach our kids so our children will understand it as well?
Well, certainly one of the considerations is, making sure that we had the money in the budget. So we were fortunate that the budget passed when it did, and then the materials come in the summer. So,
A few months.
yeah, a few months. It's not as if we get it a year in advance. I wish we could have
In
a
an
year
ideal
to get
world.
ready, but it's never, ever works out that way.
Okay, thank you.
Are there funds for teachers to get curriculum hours to write some units ahead of time, which is what they did this summer with Miss Archibald? They certainly did. So they're able to start the year with some units in hand, with materials in hand and activities that were already ready. So that's one of the ways that we counteract the problem of them. Here's your textbook, here's your workbook, here's the first day of school. They actually had planning time in the summer this year.
Are there any other questions from board members?
One quick one.
Sure.
I'd like to meet this Mrs. Archibald because her name is.
She could stand up if she's.
Is that her? That's the target right there. Thank you very much.
We're working on cloning her in the science lab right now.
Yeah.
When Mrs. Archibald, we spend money for her to professionally develop our math teachers
Sure.
for different strategies of teaching. How do we know they get it? We put that into them, but how do we know how do we assess that? How do we get that?
So they're, whatever.
I want to know that money is being well spent and well used, and that they do hopefully get it, and that they can pass it on to the school.
So one way that Miss Archibald does her professional development is that she will co-teach a lesson with a teacher. She'll plan with the teacher and they'll teach it together, or she'll teach it herself with other teachers watching, which is what we do in the Columbia Readers and Writers Workshop model at John Trumbull as well. You watch it within an actual class with actual kids, then you go practice it yourself. And so some of that supervision is done by Miss Archibald. I want to differentiate between supervision and evaluation. Supervision is taking a look and seeing if someone is implementing something in the way that we've taught them. Evaluation is putting a rating on it. Miss Archibald does not rate, she's a teacher, she's under the teacher's contract, but she's able to supervise. Our building administrators are also able to supervise if they're not doing a formal evaluation as part of the teacher evaluation plan. So in their daily walkthroughs or weekly walkthroughs of their schools, they're looking at how math or language arts or science or whatever instruction is happening in the school. And then, of course, finally, you have the teacher evaluation plan where we have a specific rubric that tells us what effective teaching practice looks like, and that is the feedback that teachers receive. So there's supervision and evaluation that occurs for all teachers.
Thank you.
Mrs. Rinaldi?
Mrs. Archibald, she's 6 through 12,
She's K-6,
K through 6.
so not at the high school at all.
not 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, or 12. Yes.
But we're going to be looking into that.
Yes.
To a different person.
Yes, she
Archibald's
can't do
not-
K-12.
Thank you. Thank you, board members, for your questions. I just have a couple of questions and statements for you. One, you had mentioned that there was tutoring available at the high school for math on 2 days a week. How do students access that, and how do they learn about that?
Well, that's brand new, so we just actually just posted it last week, so we haven't named the tutor yet.
Okay. So
But
the job's been posted.
the job for the tutor has been posted, right. And so how students access that, the usual ways that we communicate with students through their teachers in their math classes, whether it's on the daily announcements, whether it's posted, whether it's tweeted, all of those things will occur.
Okay, so hopefully we'll find somebody and.
Yeah, because it's after the teacher's contractual workday, a teacher, one of our current teachers, can take that position.
Okay, I'd just like to reiterate and agree with Mr. Gambardello when he said that he understands how much time and effort it takes to make progress, particularly in our district. We, as board members, new and veteran, can all attest to the amount of changes in both our building facilities, our building administration, the makeup of our students, and the state standards. And I think when you take a look at all of that, it's easy to understand how difficult making great progress really is. I'm a big believer in baby steps. I think that with full-day kindergarten and many other things that you've outlined, we certainly are trying to set the foundation for success for our students. When we look at these numbers for math, I would think I can speak for all of my colleagues on the board and say that we're not thrilled, as I know you aren't.
Absolutely
I know
not.
that nobody here is. But I do believe that everything is being done, and that we're to work towards more progress in that area. I think that we're going to have to spend careful attention, listening to you and our other experts in our profession in this district, because we do have them, as to where we should be looking at allocating funds on the board level to determine what would really help in this district to bring us to the next step in this process. I thank you for the preparation you did for tonight, and also in the work you put into the subcommittee meeting we had earlier this month, which I know Mrs. Rinaldi will talk about as she's the chair of that committee. But I do want to thank you and appreciate you sharing all this information with us. I know it was a difficult task, and I appreciate you answering all of our questions with such grace. So thank you very much, Dr. Parlato.
You're welcome, thank you.
Moving on to item I, discussion on information related to the possibility of using an app to track school bus locations. For those of you who were not at the last board meeting, board member Cheryl Albino had raised a question about an app that tracks students when they're on a bus, and whether or not that was something we could look into in our district. True to her word, Dr. Cardamola has done the research on this and is prepared to share with us some information this evening.
I'm going to pass down something that we received from the bus company, actually, late this afternoon. I'm sorry for Ollie and Ms. Davidson, too. What I'm handing out is something that says telematics for pupil transportation, which is the technological word, really, for what we're asking for, how to track student transportation. One of the apps that Ms. Albino referred to is what you see on the bottom. It's called a Zonar app. It is not able to be used by our bus company at this point, but just to get an idea for how it works, and then I'll go into why our bus company isn't using it yet and so forth. Generally speaking, what apparently has been happening after looking into this is that bus companies, primarily in larger cities, have been piloting this. And what has been, seems to be the standard practice is they are taking cards that have a chip in them, giving them to the students who ride the bus. Now, our students have cards that tell them what bus to get on and so on already, but all buses are outfitted with GPS. And so, first student can track where their bus is if they need to right now. But the apps are not giving a parent or a district access to where the actual bus is. That would be a security concern if a large number of people had access to where a particular bus was. The app is allowing a parent to track a student that gets on the bus with this card, with this chip in it. So if your student had this card with them, if you paid for this app, none of the apps are free, but if you paid for this app as a student, this bus company is participating, they give your child a card, you can get on the bus and your parent can log in and see where you are. From the sounds of it, and Mrs. Brown talked to Michelle Pinella, our contact at the bus company, this is the future, I think, in however many years of student transportation. Until the bus companies nationwide, and for the most part, many of them are national chains that own these buses also, are the kinks of the programs are worked out, they won't be rolling it out everywhere. So they're testing it in larger cities, obviously, because it gives them a larger basis of information. There are more students riding these buses, they're taking over larger areas and so forth. And so I think we can expect to see within the next few years that this becomes a possibility for us. Right now, it is not something that our bus company is doing, and most in Connecticut are not. But I wanted to get the information to show you. This gives you an idea. of how this app, this Zonar app works, and details a little bit more about what I just showed you. If you flip it over, it shows you what the app looks like, my bus view, school bus tracking for parents and students, and the other ground traffic control, web-based data management software for the bus company, and parts of it for the district to use, and so on. So it's a little more comprehensive of a system that the bus company would put into place too, because as you see, some of the logistics are related more to the bus company than they are to us. So for example, there's something that says 2010 electronic vehicle inspection report, and it automates and improves fleet compliance and streamlines the inspection process and so on, things that are done by the bus company in the bus yard. So we will keep you posted. Obviously, First Student knows that we are interested in doing this if it becomes a possibility. And that is the majority of the information that I was able to get at this time.
Thank you.
Do you mind, do you have anything to add? Did I miss anything, Mrs. Brown, because you also spoke to the bus company directly?
No, I think you covered it well.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to note that what's out there, based on what Dr. Cardamola has given us, is an interactive app that helps track your child while they're on the bus, which is a big difference between some of the products that are out on the market that any parent can buy for their child and put in their backpack or on their wrist that will tell you where your child is anywhere, whether they're on a bus or not. So I don't want to confuse these two things, and I appreciate you getting back to us on the subject, as I'm sure Mrs. Albino does as well.
I think this is more about ETAs, that a student arrives to a bus stop, and so you can have an idea when to pick them up or when they might be home, where the bus, and again, this wouldn't tell you when the bus was coming, however, because the child's not yet on the bus with the card. And that's a security feature.
Thank you, and thank you to Mrs. Brown for reaching out to First Student for us. Appreciate it. Moving on to item J, public participation. Do any members of the public wish to address the board this evening? That's one more time. Do any members of the public wish to address the board this evening? Okay, moving on to item K, report from the board chair. There is none. Moving on to L, committee reports. Mrs. Rinaldi, curriculum and instruction.
Yes, Mrs. Crowdy, the Curriculum and Instruction Committee met on October 25th to review and discuss the 2016 test results, and the presentation of that was done this evening by Dr. Parlato.
Thank you, Mrs. Rinaldi. Mr. Vicenzi, policy and labor.
No report at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Lambert for budget and finance.
No report at this time.
Thank you, and back to you for facilities.
Also no report at this time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Markowski, governance and community engagement.
Nothing at this time.
And Mrs. Wilk, item M, communications from the secretary.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Moving on to item N, action items, adoption of items to be approved by consent. The board received information regarding a language arts teacher at Swift requesting to have a child-rearing leave of absence under section 11 of the WEA contract, child-rearing leave. She'd like to be effective for the remainder of the school year without pay and returning in the fall of 2018. Do we have a motion on this request?
Yes, Madam Chair, I move that the board approve of the request for child-rearing leave of absence under Article 11 of the WE contract for Ms. Danielle Meir, language arts teacher at Swift Middle School, effective for the remainder of the 2016-2017 school year, without pay, returning in the fall of the 2017-2018 school year.
Thank you very much. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilk. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Moving on to item 2, consideration of the approval of the acceptance of 3 gifts, the first of which was from Southern New England Pop Warner, who donated a check for $500 towards the Watertown High School cheerleading event. The second was from Regional Director Karen Pope from Pop Warner, who donated a check for $2,000 towards the Watertown High School cheerleading event. And Mrs. Shirley Plord, who donated $342 towards the Watertown High School football team. Is there a motion to accept all 3 of these gifts?
Yes, Madam Chair, I move that the board accept each of the 3 generous donations as described and that letters of appreciation be sent to the donors.
Thank you very much. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Moving on to O, future agenda items and board member comments. Do any board members have any future agenda items they'd like to submit or comments to make at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to our last round of public participation. Do any members of the public wish to address the board this evening? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We are adjourned. The time is 8:50. Thank you.